It's very much like any other 20-year-old's journey. But I was born and brought up in a small town in Goa, and I pursued my bachelor's in science in botany, and I'm currently in my second year of law. And these are honestly pretty much the credentials that I have, and the work that we have done with Filter Coffee in the past 1 year has been like the proudest work I have done all my life. It's like I always knew I wanted to do something, but you can only get so much done when you are a very rebellious 20-year-old. So
Hello everyone, welcome to yet another episode of the Opus Show. And before I begin this episode, I had a few important questions to ask you. Well, firstly, are you someone who is really interested in business news but just does not understand the terminologies? Are you someone who knows how important it is for us to read newspapers but just does not enjoy reading them? Well, if you are someone who relates to any of these questions, then trust me, this episode, it's important for you because the story I'm going to bring for you today is really interesting. From studying biology to law, our guest for today has her own media company. Now, her company simplifies business and tech news, makes it easy to read, and also adds memes to them. Isn't that a complete package? Not only that, come what may, hail or storm, this newsletter is going to reach your inbox every single morning without fail. So join me in welcoming someone whose mission in life is to change everyday media for the Indian youngsters. The founder of Filter Coffee, Tanvi Raut Desai. Thanks a lot for coming onto the show, Tanvi.
thank you so much for having me, man. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Well, I have been looking into your whole journey for quite some time, ever since I first, like even before I first hit you up on LinkedIn, when I looked, research into you, the primary research, and then when you actually accepted coming onto the show, then I actually began looking into everything that you've done with Filter Coffee, and it was just amazing. And I remember this one night when I was going on Twitter and I was just scrolling through all the tweets because you're very vocal about how you're building Filter Coffee. And then you were retweeting a lot of organic people, like just people who just found you organically, love the kind of content that you're putting out. And they just because they loved it, they just posted it, and just through word of mouth, it's growing. And what's really fascinating for me is that you're not from a media background, right? So you've done a BSc in plant biology, botany and plant
Botany,
biology,
yes.
and that was like 3 years, and now you're in the middle of law, right?
Law school, yes.
Oh my God, that's crazy. And in the middle of all of this, you have also started a media company. So how did this all begin? Like, why so many changes, and how did you decide to just start Filter Coffee?
It's not a very fancy story. I kind of have a super traditional background, and it's very much like any other 20-year-old's journey. But I was born and brought up in a small town in Goa, and I pursued my bachelor's in science in botany, and I'm currently in my second year of law. And these are honestly pretty much the credentials that I have, and the work that we have done with Filter Coffee in the past 1 year has been like the proudest work I have done all my life. It's like I always knew I wanted to do something, but you can only get so much done when you are a very rebellious 20-year-old. So, coming back to how I got started, it was the peak of lockdowns. It is like May 2020, and college had gone remote, and I had a lot of time on my hands. Also, there was so much going on around us, like people getting laid off left, right, and center, vaccine news, so many strains of the virus, companies going bankrupt. And I was finding it really hard to keep up with everything. And as kids, we were always encouraged to read a lot. like whether it was newspapers or long form content or some magazine. So our parents always were like, you have to read. So knowledge is greater than everything. So and now it might actually sound funny, but I relied on memes as a source of news. So
Yeah, it's
if
very
you
relatable. Yeah,
yeah,
that.
it's like if you look at any news source at the disposal of people of our age, it's either newspapers or stupid websites of traditional companies, that is Times of India or Indian Express and stuff, that gives people a very terrible experience, that
Hmm.
has too many ads, and you have to literally go and search for news, and
Yeah.
discovery of stuff that actually makes and leaves an impact on somebody is not very easy. So while I was having this casual conversation with Tejas, he kind of got me signed up to the Morning Brew and the Hustle. And I go check them out, and I receive an email from them the next day. And the mails were so beautifully written. And I was completely new to all of this. And I was really left fascinated by how easy they made everything. That there was no jargon used. They explained even the most basic stuff, almost as if they were trying to like kind of story tell the business world. So to me back then it was like a very wow moment. So like it dawned on me that if somebody can summarize stuff, like there is a lot of scope for curation, right? So that kind of
Mm-hmm.
got me thinking, what if I go out and start writing small summaries like these and
Yeah.
simplify business concepts for my friends, because I did not have any subject matter expertise. So I never thought that it would go beyond my circle.
Mhm.
So for a week or so, I wrote the summaries to myself, and I slowly started pushing them out to my friends and family after a week. And
And this
things
was
started
this
picking
was
up.
daily news, or did you start with like one news per article and then
No, it was daily news. I used to
daily
compile
news used to
like,
summarize? Yeah.
yes, compile almost 5 to 6 articles that were important. I kind of read them, I understood what they were trying to say, and
Hmm.
I typed it down according to my understanding, like how you would tell somebody while talking to them. Like if you were to explain the same article to someone, I typed it out in the same language.
Yeah, yeah.
It was very, very informal, and that is kind of
Hmm.
how I got started.
All right. So you shared it with a few of your friends, and what was the initial reaction about this? Because I don't think the newsletter had started. So what was it when you were explaining it to them? How did you put it up, and what was their reaction?
Okay, so they were quite fascinated because you don't expect somebody to just do start something of their own during a lockdown, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because you would normally expect somebody to just Netflix and chill or watch something or read something, not
yeah,
actually start creating stuff
yeah.
and take time out of your schedule, 8 to 10 hours a day, just put everything in. Like you don't expect that from people, right? So most of my friends were like, maybe she's gonna stop doing this after a week or so. Maybe she's gonna be
Hmm.
bored. Maybe she's gonna be
Yeah.
tired of all this. Maybe it's not going to get that much traction. And honestly, I never thought that it would get that much traction. I thought the
And
idea was pretty stupid as well.
and this
But
was this was
I can't.
before it was a newsletter, right? So I mean, just trying to
Uh,
picture it, what it is. Was it like a Word
okay,
document
so
or typed it out before you?
no.
Okay.
Yeah, so what happened was I was completely new to this whole thing, right? So
Yeah.
I had to actually go and ask Tejas for help
Hmm.
when it came to Substack and everything.
Yeah, yeah,
When I came up with this idea, I used to think, okay, that is how newsletters are sent. People actually physically type them and blast it off to people.
yeah,
I didn't know that something like Substack even existed.
yeah,
So
yeah.
they just kind of introduced me to it. Okay, there is a platform called Substack where it's specially made for newsletters, and the creator economy was heating up. Like it was at its peak then,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
almost everybody had a lot of time on their hands, right? And
yeah, yeah.
Substack was like picking up a lot of pace. People were writing newsletters left, right, and center,
Hmm.
and they were writing stuff about almost everything and anything, whether it was travel, whether it was lifestyle, whether it was simplifying finance, whether it was simplifying tech. So
Hmm. Hmm.
it started out as a newsletter, as a proper newsletter, but
That's a
I
proper
never
newsletter.
thought it would go beyond my
All
circle.
right. So since day one, you saw these, I think, Morning Brew, Huffington Post.
Yes, Morning Brew and Hustle. Yes.
Yeah, and you knew that it's gonna be in the form of a newsletter, right? Okay, that's great. And you made a few of your friends and family subscribe to it, and on a daily basis, you used to send them a newsletter. All right. How did you grow from that when it was just your friends
Uh,
and family?
I had started pushing it out on WhatsApp. So I actually have written a whole thread about this. So when you start something and you are not acquainted with any other platform other than WhatsApp, so the first idea that you get is, okay, how can I utilize this platform the best?
Yeah.
And when it struck me that I could use WhatsApp broadcast, and I just started with that. So WhatsApp is kind of the best platform to build an initial audience, especially if you are kind of new to this whole side hustle thing.
Yeah.
So and honestly, you don't end up getting the ideal audience right in the beginning because it's just your personal network, right? And
Yeah.
it's always kind of a bit biased towards supporting you. And also it kind of helps keep you motivated because it's always better to have just you and your neighbor on the email list, right? So I could use anybody, any of my friends or any of my professors. So about I had like roughly 250 plus contacts in my list, and I typed out a very small broadcast message because if it was very long, nobody would bother to even read it. So I added a link and I added a small description.
Yeah.
And I just blasted it off to the whole contact list. And I asked friends to broadcast it. I kind of might have bribed them as well. So, so WhatsApp broadcasts are very powerful. The kind of the best one-on-one channel there is, but the key is to use it very responsibly. And it doesn't get you the people right in the beginning because I remember this experience where I kind of got a very huge message from my professor saying not to share stuff on the WhatsApp group because he probably thought that it was me forwarding somebody else's matter. Maybe she didn't realize that I was the one writing it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like I kind of took that to heart because okay, maybe she did not like what I was reading, like she did not like what I wrote, and that kind of got to me. But I slowly understood that you don't end up finding your audience right in the beginning, and you can't just give up because one professor is telling you not to share, right? So after that, I kind of got a little bit active on Twitter because I had like a very small following back then. So what was there to lose, right? So I just kind of went and started. Like it's kind of amazing how the platform works, and I really did not know what to share. So I just started tweeting about general struggles of starting something of your own, or some days I would tweet a link to the newsletter and a small description, and we'd get like 5 or 6 more readers because they used to go and check out the link in my bio or the description in my bio as well. Like who is this person? There's always this curiosity, right? So I think it was kind of also the consistency that I used to post it almost every day that led people to give us shouts and recommend the newsletter to more people. So also after like I remember this was kind of a breakthrough moment for me after like 2 months or so. A few people from the I think India startup Twitter found Filter Coffee and started sharing it in their own circle. So we got, and they when it comes to women in the tech circle, right, there are very few that you will find. So somebody just went out and made a list, and I was very surprised to see my name in that list.
Yes.
So
Okay,
that is when I was exposed to this whole new world. Okay, there is something called India Startup Twitter. There are a lot of people who are doing a lot of things. They are doing podcasts, they're writing their own newsletters, and it was like I it was very fascinating. So we were kind of at 400 to 350, 400 subscribers by then. And also that kind of the shouts helped me get my target audience. So I kind of discovered it unknowingly. I did not actually go out and think, okay, I might find my audience here, because initially I thought I might find my audience on WhatsApp, but I was like very, very wrong there. So after that, we just stayed very, very consistent with the newsletter. We tried to add value, and the journey was kind of unconventional as well, right? So people kind of took notice of that, and that kind of helped FC. And our perspective was very, very different from how traditional media companies work, because we had absolutely no idea how people how people manage a media operation. And I think that is kind of what helped us as well, because we brought a very, very fresh mind. Okay, we have no idea how this works. We do not know how people scale companies. We were just starting and doing our own thing, and that is how just we kept going, and that is how kind of we helped get a very, very good audience that we are very, very, very proud about as well.
I see. And okay, so how many subscribers do you have right now currently?
We are very, very close to 11K.
Very close to 11K, and this must be in about a year.
Yes.
Right. That's an amazing, incredible feat. And well, what I understand, one of the key things that actually sets you apart was consistency. And as you said, initially when you started off, it is kind of, like everybody thought that you would give up in a few days. What made you stick ahead? Like, did you know from the very start that this will be something like Huffington Post or, Morning Brew? Or was it just, like, what I'm trying to understand over here is what kept you consistent initially? Because once you start getting the reaction and a positive, like more readers and a good reaction from your subscribers, that automatically motivates you. But what about the initial days when you really have like 1, 2, 3 people reading your newsletters and they are your family members and close friends? So what kept you going then?
I honestly didn't think we would come this far, because I had never scaled anything like this. I had never worked on any independent project, or I was just an average 20-year-old. So it was kind of very difficult to get over that initial, okay, what if people don't end up liking what I write? And I did not have any other woman in the family with an unconventional career to look up to. And it was kind of I was trying for med school, and I did not get it. That was before I joined BSc. So it was a complete bummer, because I had no idea that what I wanted to do next, and that kind of ended up having a huge impact on my confidence. And I think I kind of also joined law school to buy myself some time. And when I did have that time, it was like, what if I don't go ahead with this now? I will never probably end up doing something. So years will just pass by, and I will be just another 20-year-old having not achieved anything. And it was also like I didn't want this opportunity to go, because people were starting to take notice. So when we started posting on Twitter, people were just coming in, giving us shouts. And when you have that audience, you end up getting that confidence. Okay, there are a certain number of people who rely on me for news, so I don't want to let them down. And I wasn't doing anything anyway, so it wasn't like college had gone remote, college was completely closed, so I had a lot of time on my hands. So what other thing could I have done? So I just went with it. I just did what I could do and just kept at it.
That's interesting. There's I think, a tweet where you said that you were running the whole operation through your pocket money, right? And I assume, because I believe Substack is free, right?
Yes,
You do
Substack is
not have to pay a subscription for Substack. And so I think when you say you're spending pocket money, it must be for interns. So when did you decide that it's time for you to get more hands on board and actually scale this in terms of manpower working towards the whole newsletter? Like when did that point come when you thought, yeah, now is the time I need to get interns on board?
okay. So when I started out, it was just me who was compiling everything for almost 2 months. Before I was kind of getting a little bit burnt out because I was spending a lot of time on this.
Mhm.
And a friend kind of decided to help me out. So to make it a bit professional, I kind of offered to pay her. It was
Mhm.
very, very basic pay. So, and she was a friend. So she kind of understood.
Yeah,
And she's a law student as well. So
yeah,
she was kind of doing me a favor, really.
yeah.
So apart from that, there weren't many expenses because, like you said, Substack was basically free. So it was just me, and I spent a little bit of money on equipment as well because I had to buy a laptop and stuff to keep things going. So for the first 3 months or so, we were spending like approximately 5 to 7K a month, which was just pocket money, some savings, and everything. And when it started picking up, when we started getting a lot of traction, it actually dawned on me that it could be a full-fledged media operation and not just a newsletter. Like you could do Instagram, you could do like post threads on Twitter, have a whole new account for Filter Coffee, and we took our time with it because I just didn't want to get somebody on board who I didn't vibe with. So we took a lot of time. So for the first 3 or so months, it was just me and her.
Mhm.
And then I slowly started putting out tweets that we were looking for people. And
Mhm.
since it was just me spending my own savings, it was very basic pay. So I didn't want to make a full-time hire. I just went out and got like an intern. And
Mhm.
then I moved from full-time writing to operations, a little bit of writing, and a little bit of growth. So I had
Mhm.
to get another full-time writer on board to like completely keep things running and free me up so that I could focus on growth and stuff. So it I didn't have like a major realization moment, but it was kind of since it started picking up, that is how I realized that this could be something big.
Mhm. And what's the process of hiring good talent? Because it's
Um,
so difficult. Because the person you hire, and if that person is not fitting the team right or not getting the kind of value that you hope to get from the person, then you've wasted probably a month. You've not really gone over there like to where you wanted, and you have to like redo the whole process. So what is your method of making sure that you get some good interns?
I honestly did not have any experience of how people go about hiring and stuff. So I kind of made my own manual of how I would go about hiring.
Okay,
So
and that is.
it has been it has been a task. So and I did not look for a resume because I
Okay.
never asked them for a resume. Okay, do you have have you worked anywhere else? Like all the people that are working with us right now,
Hmm.
almost like three of them are college students and one is a full-time writer. So
Hmm.
they did not have any previous experience. The writer did have a little bit of experience, and it's like not many people talk about how important and how difficult it is to find people who are on the same bandwidth as you, and enthusiastic people who actually understand why you are doing what you're doing. They don't relate to, some of them don't relate to what you're doing, right? So it
Hmm.
was very difficult for me to actually find somebody, and it's very rare. But we got really lucky with the people that we have currently. So we have Ishika and Yogesh who handle growth for us. Kashvi, who recently joined us to help us with other social media channels. We have Ruchir, who is doing a very, very solid job of writing for us. And the idea kind of was to get somebody who is kind of better than you, because they kind of start thinking when you where you stop, right?
Yeah.
And that is how kind of good ideas are born. And I never wanted people who would just agree with me. Okay, you are right. I didn't want that. I wanted somebody to just challenge me, like get on my nerves, keep me on my toes, and that is what the interns do. And like almost the three of them are younger than me, so they're like always asking questions, always questioning things, always asking me why I'm doing things the way that I'm doing. So it was kind of a learning experience for me as well.
That's nice. That's nice. And like I looked into the few people who are actually working, and these are also kind of people who have a lot of presence on social media, right? If I'm not mistaken.
They initially did not have any presence, so it was like
Okay.
it's always important to build a personal brand, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you can see Morning Brew nailing this. It's like whenever you come across somebody who works for Morning Brew, you can immediately tell that they work for Morning Brew, even if they don't mention it, because they have this certain appearance on social media.
Okay.
Like you end up if you follow them, like I mean you end up associating them with certain operations. There is a guy named Toby who
Mm-hmm.
everybody knows is very, very good with memes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There is Kinsey, who does podcasting, and she doesn't talk about it, but people know. And that is how important building a personal brand is.
Yeah.
So building that personal brand helped them a lot, kind of associate them with Filter Coffee. And okay, now people actually end up thinking, okay, these people are part of Filter Coffee. It just comes.
I see. I see. Okay, that kind of makes sense. I agree. Um, Talking about the kind of content that you put out, it's so different. There's a lot of memes, obviously, and gifs in the middle of the whole content. It's very easy to read, no doubt. Uh, how is this approach? Like, how do you figure out whether what is your criteria for good content? Like, yes, this is the content that we will put in the newsletter, and this is what needs a bit more tweaking. What is that frame of reference coming from?
Okay, so the whole point of starting the newsletter was to make it interesting and as engaging as possible for the young readers, because honestly, we don't have that attention span anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's something that takes a lot of time to read, we'll just drop off in the middle, right?
Yeah.
And people have zero patience when it comes to reading long form content. And traditional media has always focused on the negative side of things, stressing on controversies, religion, and never anything about how the business side of things is more flourishing than ever. And people like stories, so people like memes. That is what we decided to go with. Like basically, uh, tell explain the articles like we were trying to tell a story with the help of memes and a few jokes thrown in between. So we kind of have always been particular about what we post, and uh, it always goes through a whole huge process. And we try to filter out the content in such a way that it leaves the reader with some insight and some perspective. And we try to think from the reader's perspective. Okay, if I was a reader, would I enjoy reading this? And it helps to figure out what kind of content to put out and what to actually avoid.
Yeah, I get that. I think I can clearly see that you have nailed the whole value game when it comes to just providing value for everyone. Because, and I don't know whether this was initially the whole way you proceeded with operating, or did it just happen like it just happened with time, wherein you just figured out that, oh, we are providing good value and we need to focus on giving more and more value to these people. But I have noticed it from reading your newsletters and everything that yeah, it is a complete value game, and you started with value, and then based on that, once you have figured out like yeah, this is the product and it is truly valuable, did you then start building the rest of the entire operations behind it?
When it comes to providing value, traditional media companies optimize for only views, right? So that is
Mm-hmm.
not what we were trying to do, because it kind of came from personal frustration towards the lack of engaging news. So I just wanted to go ahead with it from my own personal experience. Okay, what
Mm-hmm.
would I want to see? Like if I was a reader and they were writing about controversies again, I would probably not read it. If I was a
Yeah.
reader of Filter Coffee and they were covering stuff that nobody wanted to read, for example, like if they were only focusing on the negative side of things, like perspectives from a time when India was a struggling nation, it's not anymore. We have made a
Mm-hmm.
lot of progress, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't want that. And there were a lot of things going on that nobody was covering, and we didn't want to just end up being another newsletter that just people subscribe to and never end up reading.
Mm-hmm.
And there is so much content being put out that it's difficult to stand out when the content is very mediocre, right? So we didn't want that as well. So it was kind of like, okay, what would you like to see? What would somebody your age would like to see? Like short news, crisp, complete, like completely different from how a traditional media company would write,
Yes.
and like written in a very very light tone, as interactive as possible, with memes and gifs thrown in between. And that we just went with it. And when I go and look back at the old newsletters that we have written,
Mm-hmm.
I cringe, because it was a whole process of
Yeah.
like we didn't figure it out overnight. It was just like months and months of work, just figuring out, okay, people shared this, maybe the people ended up liking it.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
is how we just figured out what people would like to read, and we just kept at it. And
So
we're
there
still
was
trying to figure out, because you go ahead.
no, as I was like there's a lot of analyzing into what worked and what didn't. And I think that's
Like you never honestly, even if it's not just when it comes to a newsletter, it's like even you might have figured out, even when it comes to podcasting or like any other content creation
yeah,
mode, you just figure it out as you go. You don't
yeah,
nail it right in the beginning,
in the
right?
beginning,
Okay,
absolutely.
this is what got me the maximum shares. Writing it in a very light tone, if people actually liked reading it. And that is how
Hmm.
you just and figure it out as you go.
All right. Now, is this a full time? Like, clearly, this is a full time thing for you right now. I was very interested in like what's the business model behind it? Because from what I can understand so far, and maybe you can help me enlighten me more about how it is a filter coffee makes more money. Because from what I can see right now, it's purely working on your savings and your pocket money. So how is
Okay.
that cash flow coming in?
For the first 9 months or 10 months or so, we tried to spend out of our own pocket, and
Mhm.
didn't take any money from anybody. It was just savings, and also making Filter Coffee a subscription model uh, was completely out of the question, because I had started it with the idea of making it more accessible to people like me,
You mean
right?
a paid subscription on Substack, right? Like you need to
Yes,
pay a certain
yes,
amount
yes.
to be subscribed. Yeah,
To get access
absolutely.
to my content, yes. So
Absolutely,
I didn't
absolutely.
want that, because it would putting your content behind a paywall is like the worst, and I absolutely did not want that, because I
Yeah.
was a student myself and I could actually relate to what other people were going through as well, because you really end up spending on subscriptions and stuff
Yeah.
unless you are like fully earning, right?
True,
So
true. And secondly, it also
and
beats your reach because if somebody is genuinely interested in what it is and then
absolutely.
they see that I have to pay to get it, I might not really go ahead and pay for it. So yeah, that
Absolutely,
makes
yes.
sense.
And
Yeah.
Yeah, so we just wanted to make it accessible to more people, and asking students to pay for it or young people who weren't earning yet
Mm-hmm.
would not have made any sense. So we kind of decided to go with the ad model. I mean, ads get a lot of bad reputation because
Mm-hmm.
like people don't like seeing ads, right? Okay, like, there is an ad in between. Okay, I don't want to look at it. That's how we
Mm-hmm.
function.
Yeah.
So but when we decided to take ads, we didn't want it to be just another ad that got us money. So we tried to keep a very high bar and work with brands or startups that add a lot of are a net positive to the community, and it kind of worked perfectly. And before we started taking ads, people were approaching us like if we wanted to advertise in the newsletter, but I
Mm-hmm.
never really went ahead with it because I did not want to mess with the content of the newsletter,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
we were writing for people like me, and putting something that isn't related to the news that I was writing would like make people drop off, and I didn't want
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
So this April, we finally decided to experiment with the idea because an idea with the advertisements and all. So and decided to work with only a few select ad partners that like we've got really lucky that they were a bunch of amazing people,
Mm-hmm.
and also our team was growing as well, and so was our audience, and we kind of just decided to go with our gut and not think it through. We just chose the partners in a way to ensure that each one of them provided some or the other value to the readers, and
Mm-hmm.
not to just make it about money. It was about building a very long-term relationship with the reader as well. And most of our readers have been there right from the start. So people
Mm-hmm.
actually understood, okay, this is their journey. This is what they're thinking of doing. They are the whatever they're posting in the newsletter is doesn't throw the reader off. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
it was just it fit right in the partners that we had. That their content fit right in with what we were writing. So that
True,
was the
true.
best part of it.
I get it, and that completely makes sense. Uh, Having partners that you can like, yeah, because as the newsletter is going, even I tried to search for generic pop-up ads, or, just ads that would make it feel like another website, and I couldn't, Uh, and so, yeah, now when you're talking about the advertisements, yeah, it makes sense that you have actually very naturally put these maybe shout outs, you could say, or ads in the middle of content in a way that is just, easy to read, easy to, there's a good flow
It's
about
not
it.
invasive at all.
Exactly. It's not at all invasive. That's right. And that's a unique approach to that's extremely interesting. I did not expect advertisements to be the source of revenue. There is another bit that's really fascinating. Getting back to your Twitter, I have been seeing people talking about building in public, and I'm sure this is also something that you've been doing quite openly, and it works a lot with uh, you know when you have a product or when you have a startup wherein you don't only you not only tell about your wins and how many subscribers you've got, for instance, in your startup, but also where you're losing, what's going wrong, and so on. So what are the pros and cons of building in public? Because that whole the Twitter land, the whole building in public that goes on a lot in Twitter really fascinates me. And did it really help you? I mean, of course, I believe it did help you grow the entire Filter Coffee subscriber base. So, talk about building in public.
Okay, so when it comes to building in public, people usually shy away from it because when you are actually putting your work out there, people mostly end up focusing only on the positive parts of it, not on the negative parts. But what they don't realize is that founders or entrepreneurs are human beings as well. They're not perfect at all. Nobody
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Like everybody is trying to just get their shit together, trying to find a way to make things work. And when you actually go out and tell people, okay, this is the problem that I'm facing, this is something that I don't understand, this is what I faced while I was trying to build a certain thing. And people end up relating to that, because then you understand that you are not superhuman, that you are just like everybody else, that you are just putting in the work. And that kind of really helps, because people actually like seeing the behind the scenes, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And not just the rosy
Finished
part
product.
of things. Yes, exactly. So we didn't want the whole story to be just like a bed of roses. We didn't want that. We wanted to show the thorny side as well, and that is exactly what we did. And I think that kind of got people really interested. Okay, this is the problem that they're facing. So many of our emails end up in promotions, and we actively talk about that. We curse Gmail, we curse the email platform. So that's like, you tell them, okay, this is the problem that they're facing, and they actually relate to it, because most of the community that we have, uh, they have their own newsletters or whatever, and they kind of relate to it. So when you like go out and actually talk about your struggles as well, people relate to it more.
Yeah, talk about it openly.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, it gives it a more, like, it gives the whole company a more human touch to it, because now company has problems, and it's not just a newsletter that comes into your inbox every morning, but also the struggles of 5-7 people, a team of people who are actually trying to make sure that it comes,
make things work. Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Also, obviously, you do not come across as someone who is the typical kind of an influencer of sorts who likes putting herself out in the public, especially when it comes to self promotion. How do you self promote without sounding pretentious, without sounding preachy, with that genuine touch? Obviously, you spoke about building in public, but is there any insight that you've got from the previous 1 year journey that really makes you think like, okay, yeah, that's probably what helped me be that authentic?
Okay. The thing about self promotion is that you have to be absolutely shameless when it comes to promoting yourself or your product. Like no shame at all, no ego at all. And we are 20-year-olds, right? What do we have to lose? Like there is absolutely nothing. Like, somebody will criticize you. What bad? How will it affect you? It won't affect you in any way. You just move on. You just keep putting your product out there. So, and nobody cares about your product more than you do. So it's completely up to you to promote it, like by hook or by crook. So if you don't do it yourself, nobody else will do it for you. And yeah, so showing people proof of work actually helps build that credibility. People understand the hustle and are like always willing to help if you ask them. So I had this fear that okay, people might like not enjoy like they might feel that I am just and ending up in their DMs and irritating them. But people understand that okay, a lot of effort goes around in building an everyday newsletter, and they actually ended up helping. Also, another hack, no, I won't say a hack, another whatever is to stop talking about your product. Like people always like keep bragging about their product. Okay, my product is this, my product is that. But what I experienced is it always helps to talk about your learnings. Like you built this, what did you experience by building this? Like what were the problems that you faced? Like what were your learnings? Why do you not write long form content? I don't write long form content because people have the attention span of a goldfish. That was a learning in itself, right? So like you kind of share the insights with them, you show them the way. Okay, this is how I build things, not just give them the final product and not make it seem like things are impossible. So it kind of helps to help them figure out how they can start their own newsletter and just share your expertise in like, and that helps up helps in promoting your product itself,
Exactly.
rather than just going
Exactly.
ahead and talking about only your product. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you talk about your learnings, your expertise, whatever you learned along the way,
Mhm.
and that helps.
Essentially, what you're talking about is document over create. I'm not sure whether you've heard of that line from Gary Vee, but that's a clear example of what exactly it is that you're trying to do when you're building in public with everything we post on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and all of that. Another interesting thing, I found you from Stoa, so I believe that you have been like you've studied at Stoa, right? Stoa school. Right. So, like, this is my hypothesis because I've been seeing the fabulous work that Raj has been doing and everything that's been going on in Stowe. I've attended a lot of their workshops too. But this is my hypothesis on for whom is it the most helpful and most valuable. I think it's people like you who have an idea, who have a business model in their head, but do not really know how to build it or do not know the stepping stones to actually see your dream come true. And so then when you do go to the team of Stoa, you go to their expertise and you interact with these people, you build that network, you eventually figure it out. So how was your experience at Stoa? Because their niche into what they're doing right now is pretty incredible and kind of it made sense, when I saw that you are from Stoa, it just made sense. Obviously, she would go over there because that is the place for her to make sure that she's not making any mistakes while building this. So, how was your entire experience with it?
The experience was amazing. The team is like absolutely amazing and one of a kind. And I was a complete noob when it came to the finance and business side of things. So
Hmm.
Stoa helped break down a lot of concepts for me, and like it really helped put my introverted ass out there. I mean, I
Yeah.
would not have done this if I wasn't a part of a bigger community. Oh,
Hmm.
like it helped me build an like amazing network that I can always rely on. Okay,
Yeah.
so Stoa gave me the tools, kind of the tools to uh, go out there and fight it out, and it's the best experience that I've ever had, and it kind of gave me like a hands-on approach to things,
Hmm.
and the founders were like always like, ever ready to help you out. There was nobody who was like, nobody let their ego come in between. Like I was just a complete kid who would just go out and ask people for help, and they would always be willing, and that was like amazing because you
Yeah.
rarely find that outside.
No, that's amazing. I mean, I've seen what they're doing, and it's pretty incredible.
Absolutely.
What is a day in um, the life of all the people who are working at Filter Coffee? Like, how does the day begin? Because I believe this is an everyday thing. You do not have Saturday, Sundays off and especially in the business and the tech world where like things are just changing every other second, you need to be on your toes and you need to be continuously working. So like, show us what a day in the life of the people at Filter Coffee is like.
Uh, Honestly, most of the day revolves around the newsletter, but like I kind of handle operations, growth, and everything else also. So the team kind of takes care of the newsletter now. So
Hmm.
we try to pick the news by around 1 p.m. because most of the important news that happens comes out later in the day,
Hmm. Hmm.
and
Hmm.
start writing by around 2 to 3. And sometimes if it's a flat news day, there is not much news to write about, then we begin a little bit later, like around
Hmm. Hmm.
5:30 or
Hmm.
5 o'clock. So the news is picked if it provides some message about the markets or gives the reader something to think about. And the whole goal is to not bore people.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
after the articles are picked, we start writing, and it's the three of us splitting like 4 to 5 stories about 1,500 words. And the team makes it a lot easier because sometimes the process ends up getting repetitive, right?
Yeah.
And since we haven't stepped out in a long time and we are working remotely, it kind of have there is a lot of communication lapse that happens at times, but
Yeah.
we try to like fight that by constantly getting on calls, telling each other what we're up to. There is no such thing as over communication. We communicate even the slightest of things. Like, okay, this is what's going on. This is what one person is working on. This is what you have to work on. This is what I will be working on. So it's just all about communicating.
I believe that it helps when people are of the same age, because then you just uh, vibe and you understand exactly where the other person is coming from, as opposed to a very huge age gap where you essentially see the people who you're working with as like having 5, 6, 7 years of work experience. Yeah, you've come a very long way over the past 1 year, all thanks to the pandemic. So what's in store for Filter Coffee? What is your big picture? Where do you want to go in the future?
Okay, so since it started, we didn't expect all the traction that we're getting, and it kind of happened because of word of mouth and complete organic growth on Twitter.
Hmm.
So we just couldn't rely on word of mouth, right? So we just have targeted all platforms and everything now. We just constantly keep posting on LinkedIn, on threads on Twitter that we think that people would like to read. So our immediate goal is to get to an insane amount of subscribers, and then think about more tools for the community. We haven't really given it much thought, but
Okay.
the immediate goal would be to just get to 50K plus subscribers by the end of the year. That's very far-fetched, but we're trying.
It's possible. It is possible, because I think it all stems from value that you're providing to the people. Because if the people do not find it valuable, then I don't think it's going to be worth their time. And then obviously you will not have number of people subscribing to your newsletter. But just looking at what all you have done over the past 1 year is just phenomenal. And like, for all those people who are actually watching it right now, go to Filter Coffee, right? The link is down below. Like, click on it right now, pause it, click on it, check it, subscribe to it, because every morning you're going to get news in a manner which is fun to read. It's going to be filled with memes. It's going to be it's going to be an enjoyable process for you to consume that news, and probably change the way how you consume news. You might probably leave newspapers altogether. And especially if you're in business or the tech world, that is the place. Filter Coffee is a must for you guys. So I am winding this up. Tanvi, where can we find you to follow your journey on all social medias? Where should we follow you?
Almost every platform, to be honest, because we just everywhere. So, but if you actually want to follow the journey, I am most active on Twitter and on LinkedIn.
Mhm. All
Instagram,
right.
not as much. Twitter and LinkedIn.
All right. So the Twitter and LinkedIn links are down below or on the screen. So yeah, do give her a follow. It's absolutely amazing what she's doing. And we can't wait for the 11K. We can't wait for the 20, 50K. And just all the best for your entire journey ahead. I just hope that it's everything just turns out as much, in fact, much better than what you imagined. So all the best for that. And
Thank you
thanks
very
again
much,
for
Nishant.
coming onto the show. It's been a pleasure having this conversation with you. Lots of insights. And I hope the people who are actually watching it enjoyed just as much as I did. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for having me. It was amazing as well.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, and see you around. Take care.